All right, welcome to Simply Good. My name is Bill Apodaca. Today we're going to be covering grilling, and we're going to be covering the larger items of meat on the grill. So we're going to have to talk about setting up your grill with direct heat and indirect heat cooking. But let's talk about the steps to grilling first. Shani and I like to say there's 5 basic steps to grilling, and that's what we want to show you today. The first step is we're going to season this rack of pork up. And you at home have 3 different ways you can do this. The first is just with salt and pepper and a little bit of oil, and that's what we're going to do today. Another way, you could put this in your favorite marinade overnight. Once it comes out of the marinade, hit it with salt and pepper, and away you go to the grill. Or third, you could use a salt spice blend, essentially dried herbs and spices mixed with salt to create a flavor profile for your pork. So when we're going to season this up, sometimes what we like to do is just lightly score the pork like so. That's going to let some of that salt and pepper get down into the meat, and it's also going to take some of the pressure off the fat so it doesn't curl up on the grill for you. And then we're just going to hit this with our Diamond Crystal Kosher salt like so. And since this is such a big piece of meat, we can be pretty heavy-handed with the salt. We'll flip it over. We'll get the back side with our kosher salt and pepper. And step 1 to grilling is done. And we are going to hit this with a little bit of oil too, just to help it prevent from sticking to the grill. Just like that. Any kind of oil would work. And now we're going to go out to the grill and show you how to grill this up. Okay, here we want to show you how to light the charcoal when you're going to start your barbecue. We like to use this chimney because you can do this without any lighter fluid. If you use lighter fluid, it imparts that lighter fluid flavor on your food and it just doesn't taste good. So this is really easy to use. You just crumple up a little bit of newspaper, put it in the bottom of the chimney, and then we're gonna put our charcoal in there. And we like to use this lump charcoal as opposed to briquettes because it's just whole pieces of wood they've turned into charcoal. So you get a much better flavor, a hotter burn, and you don't have any of those off taste with the briquettes. And then all we're gonna do is light the newspaper in the bottom. That heat's gonna funnel up into the chimney. And in about 15 minutes, this is going to be glowing hot and we'll be ready to start grilling. Okay, so our chimney is glowing red hot, and that only took 10 minutes. And that's without any lighter fluid, just newspapers underneath there. Now we like to bank our charcoal like this. And what this allows us is direct heat and indirect cooking. And what we mean by that is if we put a piece of meat directly over that hot charcoal, that's direct heat cooking. We can brown things up in 2 to 3 minutes very easily. Anything that's left on there longer is going to burn. And that's not going to work for our big roast here. So we need to utilize our indirect heat, which is this over here. It's not directly over the charcoal. So we have very little heat here. As soon as we shut this lid, we create a little oven inside there, and it's going to read about 350 degrees, and it can slow cook like that for the next 45 minutes, hour, hour and a half, however you need it, however long you need it to be in there. Since it's not directly over that charcoal, you're not going to get it burned up. So let's go ahead and do this. So now we already started with step 1, and that was seasoning our rack of pork and lightly oiling it. Now step 2, we just want to scrape our grill grates clean. And they're nice and preheated. And we're going to start this on direct heat. And we're going to put it directly over there. And we're going to set a timer for 2 minutes. And in that 2 minutes, this is going to get a beautiful golden brown sear, which looks great and tastes great. So we'll come back to this in 2 minutes. Okay, our 2 minutes were up. We're gonna flip it over, and you can see that golden brown sear we're getting on the grill. And since it was only on there 2 minutes, it didn't have time to really burn up, just get that golden brown sear. And now we're going to move it to the other side and sear it for 2 more minutes on the other side, and then we'll move it to our indirect heat. Okay, our second 2-minute timer just rang, and we'll flip this over and you can see that nice beautiful sear we have on that back side. Now at this point it still has to grill for another hour, hour and a half. So we want to utilize our indirect heat. As soon as we put it over here, it's not directly on that charcoal, so we don't have to worry about it burning. And as soon as we shut this lid, this is going to become a nice 350 degree smoky oven for us. And you'll see this dial climbing. Now you can adjust your temperature inside this grill with these airflow dampers. There's one on top, one on the bottom. And the bigger the air you have, the hotter it's going to get. We want it 350 degrees, so we'll just let those go low and slow. And this 6-pound roast is going to take about an hour, hour and a half. We're going to take this to an internal temperature of 140 degrees. And until then, we'll come back when it comes off our grill. Okay, an hour and a half has passed now. We can check on our grilled pork. And there it is. We're going to temp it with a meat thermometer here. And we're shooting for an internal temperature of about 140 degrees. That's medium for pork. It's going to kill any bacteria that may be in there, but still leave it nice, moist, and juicy. So take a look at this thing, and we're at 140 degrees. So now all we have left is the last step to grilling, which is let it rest. And to let it rest, we're going to remove this to a platter, and our numbers for letting it rest is for every pound of meat we're cooking, it's 8 minutes of rest time. So this is a 6-pound pork loin. We need to let it rest 48 minutes before we slice into it. And the whole theory behind that is once we pull this off the grill, that heat is still traveling towards the middle of the roast. The bigger the roast, the longer it takes for that heat to travel towards the middle, and it will typically rise 10 degrees in temperature. And second, this meat's really tight from being in this hot environment. So if we cut into it while it's still tight, it will squeeze all the juices out onto our cutting board. And that's all good flavor, moisture, texture, all these great things. But if we let it relax, it's going to reabsorb those juices. So when we slice into it, your guests get to enjoy the juices in the meat rather than the cutting board getting it. So the formula Shani and I have come up with is for every pound of meat we're cooking, it's 8 minutes rest time. So we're going to let this sit on the counter for, 48 minutes before we cut into it. All right, so 48 minutes has passed. Our pork loin is well rested. We feel the outside of it, it's still nice and warm, and I know it's even warmer on the inside. Now, if it's not as hot as you want it, you could pop it back in a 375 degree oven for 10 minutes just to get it really hot for yourself and then slice into it. But I know this is nice and warm inside, so we're going to cut our chops from this. And you can see how nice and juicy this is, and all the juice is staying in the meat. Still nice and warm on the inside. And that's how you grill a large roast. Remember, step 1, you season it, and we give you 3 different ways to do that. Step 2, you sear it for 2 to 3 minutes directly over the hot charcoal. Step 3, you flip it over, sear it on the other side on the hot charcoal. Step 4, we move it over to indirect heat. We shut the lid, and we now grill it to the desired doneness. And in this case, an internal temperature of 140 degrees. For the 6-pound roast, that took about an hour and a half. Then step 5, we let it rest. And then once it's rested, it's okay to serve. Remember, our rule of thumb is for every pound of meat we're cooking, it's 8 minutes of rest time. Thanks for joining us.